Hello, Year 10. Mr. Whitehead here with lesson number 6 from this remote learning at home while school still remains closed. I know it's reopened for you to come in on a part-time timetable, but we still need to ensure that you do complete the remote learning at home. The work which we will be doing often within the sessions that I see you whilst you are in school will be based on kind of refreshing and recalling that knowledge that I'm hoping that you have completed and gained since school was closed from these video lessons. So as I said, this is lesson number 6 on ideologies and themes, and this week I'm going to set this work on Tuesday the 23rd of June. I would like that complete for the following week, which is Tuesday the 30th of June. So, instructions are as follows. Please make sure that you watch the full video on YouTube, the full video lesson, taking notes and completing the activities before you start the assignment at the end of the video. The last slide of this particular video is the slide which has the assignment work on it. It is then that work, that assignment slide that you have answered the questions on about your chosen superhero film, that I would like you to submit to me on Microsoft Teams on the 30th of June. What's really, really important as well is that you have completed all the previous lessons before starting this one. This is lesson 6. So if you have not completed the lessons on iconography, stock characters, narrative, Todorov, and action and enigma codes before starting this lesson, this is your time to pause it and go back and complete the one and the work that you are up to. So, in order to complete this lesson, you will need your creative media book or a piece of A4 paper to take notes on and complete the activities on. You'll need a pen. And you'll also need access to your emails or to Microsoft Teams, because you need to be able to access the resources and this video, okay? And you also need to have access to Microsoft Teams in order to submit the work on the 30th of June. You also need access to a PowerPoint or Microsoft Word, because I would like you to complete the assignment work on the last slide on either PowerPoint or Microsoft Word. So, narrative themes. What is a narrative theme? So, I'm hoping, well, I know that you will have looked at narrative themes in your English lessons, okay? So you are studying various different books and various different plays. Within those books and within those plays, there are narrative themes running through the different pieces of literature, okay? So, what's important to note is that narrative themes, they don't just exist in books and in plays. They also exist in TV and film, okay? So, as you have already touched on in other subjects, you've already touched on narrative themes before. What I would like you to do is just pause the video and write down what your definition in your own words about what you think a narrative theme is. So pause the video, 2 minutes, off you go. Excellent. I'm hoping that you've managed to get your definition down in your own words. If you haven't, then please pause the video and make sure that you have a go, have a think what a narrative theme is. So what are narrative themes? So narrative themes are central meanings of a narrative. They are the central meanings of a narrative. They're what creates the meaning. Okay, so often they express what ideas or issues are raised within the story. Okay, so they express what ideas or issues are raised within the story. They are the meaning behind the story, often the morale or the moral of the story. So, what's important as well to understand is that these narrative themes, they're often recurring and repeated within a genre. Okay, so if I said to you the romantic comedy genre, the narrative themes within a romantic comedy genre will be repeated over and over again within that genre, okay? Because that is what the themes of that narrative and that genre is. So these themes are expressed through what the characters say, do, and think, and through the actions that take place within the story, okay? Themes also reveal how the plot and setting of the narrative are constructed and presented. So that basically means they reveal slowly, the themes slowly reveal how the story is going to go and how it is presented to the audience. But what's really important is that you understand these themes are often expressed through characters and what they do in the storyline. So, with this in mind, you should now have a pretty good understanding of what narrative themes are. If you just need to go back and take a note on the previous slide, then please, by all means, do so. So you have a thorough understanding of what narrative themes are. Okay, but I want us to do now a quick activity. So now that you have an understanding of what narrative themes are, I want you to apply this knowledge to TV and film. Okay, so you may have done it in English with books, and now I want you to apply this knowledge for TV and film. So, I want you to note down all of the narrative themes that you may see in the horror genre. And I want you to try and aim to write down 6 different narrative themes that you would expect to see in a typical horror film. Okay? So this is the kind of layout that I'm expecting to see in your notes. I want you to create maybe a small little table with 6 different points, and I want you to note down all the different narrative themes that you would expect or may see in the horror genre. Now, what's important that you know is that this can literally be anything. If you think that something may be a theme, get it down. If you get more than 6, fantastic. Get all the different things down. This is you just almost putting your ideas onto a piece of paper. So I'm expecting you to take about 3 minutes on this activity, so aim for a theme about every 30 seconds. So pause the video, spend 3 minutes on this activity. Off you go. Excellent. So I'm hoping you've done that, and I've got my list here now on the screen. So I want you to add anything from my list which you haven't got before. So I've got the idea of being fearful or scared. Mystery, okay? Mystery in the horror genre, absolutely. Darkness, this is a theme. We're often shown themes of darkness, whether that be with the lighting is dark or whether it be actual quite a sinister plot or a sinister storyline. Vulnerability is a big one. Often, quite typically, there is a female character who gets murdered first. They are seen and represented as vulnerable in this genre. There's also this idea of good versus evil. So it may be somebody who is good working against maybe the evil spirit. It could be an evil character against maybe the police. It could be that idea of a good person versus a bad person in the horror genre is a theme as well. Isolation. So kind of similar to vulnerability. Isolation and loneliness are definitely one. Entrapment, feelings of being trapped. Sacrifice, absolutely. Maybe someone has to sacrifice something in order to discover the truth of the mystery. And then death, of course, is a key theme in the horror genre as well. So add those to your lists if you haven't done so already. Okay, so it's all well and good understanding themes in the horror genre. The horror genre is probably the easiest really to go off, but your case studies are all superhero films. You've all chosen superhero films. So we now need to apply this knowledge to the superhero genre. So, just as you did with the horror genre, now I want you to note down what themes you would expect to see running through the superhero genre in a film or a TV show. So I want you to spend another 5 minutes on this activity. Again, creating this table that you can see on your screen now and aiming to note down at least 6 different narrative themes that you see typically within the superhero genre. So pause the video, 5 minutes, off you go. All right, fantastic. I'm hoping that you've now managed to note down some narrative themes that you would expect to see within the superhero genre. And I'd like you to again add these 5 themes which I came up with to your lists. So some of them are similar to the ones which we had in the horror genre. That idea of good versus evil. Responsibility, the idea that the superhero feels responsible for the safety of the public to protect people. Sacrifice, the superhero often sacrifices something within their life in order to be the superhero. isolation and loneliness. Often superhero characters are quite lonely, they're quite isolated because of the way in which and their manner of work. They can't be open and totally honest with people. And then finally, teamwork. Now, this depends on the superhero film which you have obviously chosen, but some of you who may have chosen Avengers, teamwork is a key theme throughout that film, or those films, should I say. So I'm going to take you through now some of these key themes in a bit more detail, just because these are the 5 themes which you are going to discuss in your assignment, okay? I'm hoping that you got something quite similar, but these are the 5 themes that you are going to discuss in your assignment, okay? So I'm going to take you through now these ideas in a bit more detail, one by one. So this idea of good versus evil. So in the superhero genre, this is a common narrative theme which runs throughout, all right? Now, if you remember, if you cast your minds back to when we did narrative and binary opposites, good versus evil is an example of a binary opposite, okay? And the storyline develops and the narrative of a superhero film develops because of the conflict between the hero and the villain. That is the main kind of theme which is running throughout. It's the superhero versus the villain character. So what's something to note down which I thought was of importance? This narrative theme of good and versus evil is often shown to the audience within with lessons of morale, okay? So this battle of good versus evil is kind of shown through this morale and the way in which one person maybe views the world one way and then the other person views the world a totally different way. All right? So I kind of see good and evil as kind of like a two-way street, and you can either choose either the good side or the evil side. Okay? So this kind of two-way street can lead us down different paths. And sometimes the destinations of these paths and where it takes us isn't what we often expect. So often in a superhero film, you'll understand the kind of choices in which the superhero character will take. Okay, they will choose what we view as being the right path. Okay, because he's seen as being the good character and the character in which the audience are rooting for. Whereas the villain, we see him take a different path, and it's usually a bit darker. All right, so what's important to note down and to understand, though, is that we are often shown as an audience these two paths, and the villain character taking the bad path and the hero taking the good path. And it does that to almost play on our minds, okay? So many superheroes, they often have to deal with some sort of decision in their life, okay? Now, if you cast your minds back to when we did genre codes and conventions, right? This was before school's closure. We looked at the idea that superheroes experience some level of tragedy. So something happens in their life which is seen as tragic, whether that be a death of a loved one or a loss of a race or a losing of some sort of battle. And then the superhero, they choose the good path and they let this path then define them. They are not defined by this tragic event that's happened. They want to then strive to do something good out of a bad situation, okay? So that's the way in which good versus evil works, and you'll probably understand that this binary opposite and this kind of common narrative theme is a theme which essentially runs throughout a superhero film. So next up is responsibility. Okay, so responsibility and superheroes. So superheroes are seen as role models, okay? So they treat people often with respect and dignity, and they treat people as equals even though they have superpowers, okay? So they provide a good example of what it means to take responsibility for yourself. All right, so I said before that often superheroes experience some level of trauma. Superheroes, even after experiencing some level of trauma, they take responsibility for their own lives and make sure that they get on the right path to strive to do something good. So superheroes perform good deeds, okay? And they make sacrifices on behalf of others. But what's important to note down is no matter how mighty and powerful they may seem, you will notice that they do not try to rule other people for their own good. They don't use their powers for their own personal gain. They actually often do it for the benefit of society and to protect society. So I feel that superheroes almost feel that they have a responsibility to protect the public because they have got the powers that they have, whether they've been issued it through a scientific experiment or maybe something that went wrong, or maybe the fact that they are reliant on gadgets and weapons. They feel a responsibility to almost act as if that act safely and to protect society. Okay, so that's why superhero films are often set in big cities, because it shows the level of responsibility in which the superheroes actually have. So superheroes know that although people often need to overcome obstacles, we must not be absolved by our responsibility for ourselves and for each other. So this is kind of like a superhero's moral code, and they do feel responsible for that. So next up is sacrifice. So a trait in which you'll find most superheroes is that they sacrifice and put their own lives in danger for the good of others. So I think an absolutely key part to pick out is that when a battle is starting, the superheroes immediately run towards the action. They run towards the supervillain or the villain character or what's gone wrong. Whereas the total opposite, the civilians and the people within society, they run away from the fight. Okay, and I would probably too. But this is the sacrifice in which superheroes take. They put their own lives at risk for the good of others. So heroes put their lives on line to protect and save others. It's linking to that responsibility. They feel responsible to protect others and to protect society. So they even take special care during a battle to make sure that innocent bystanders are saved, whether that's protecting them from the villain character picking on a particular individual. But that's the kind of level of responsibility they feel to protect others and the sacrifice that they make. So I think you need to ask yourself, how many of us really would be willing to lay down our life for others? So this is something that's really, really difficult to do. And only people who really, really care about protecting people and protecting society would actually be willing to do this. So I think it really shows that level of sacrifice in which superheroes have. So the last one I'm going to take you through now is isolation. So superheroes are often people who are seen to live quite isolated lives and lonely lives and secluded lives. And this is because of various reasons. So superheroes have various different views and outlooks about matters around them. And these outlooks, their views on life, are often very, very different to ordinary men. So even something like their outlook to protect others and to sacrifice themselves, that is different in comparison to an ordinary man. So, with that in mind, with the fact that their views and outlooks on things are different, they often go against the mainstream way of thinking, and they go against the norms of society, the things that you would expect people to follow, the rules, the regulations that people follow. These superheroes go against them. So therefore, they don't tend to have many friends or people around them because of that reason. Also, I think something which is important to note down in regards to the reasons why superheroes may remain lonely is the fact that they often think deeply about some of their problems. And some of their problems are very complex. They're quite deep-rooted. They're quite challenging, some of the problems which they face. So they have to think deeply and practice this deep thinking in order to actually become the superhero that they are. Whereas you might say people and ordinary people within society, they tend to be quite self-centered and don't care maybe as much for others and think only about themselves. So superheroes have that, it's in the superhero's nature to care, to sacrifice themselves and be responsible for others. And this idea goes against the kind of normal way of thinking. So again, that may be the reason why they might not have many friends, and why they are isolated and why they are lonely. So I've just taken you through there the different narrative themes in which you are going to discuss in your assignment. If you are still unsure about those different narrative themes, please go back and re-watch that section of the video in which I've just explained them. If you are still struggling, make sure that you are taking notes whilst you're watching the video. But I am available over email or on the chat system on Microsoft Teams if you are struggling about those different narrative themes. But now I want to move on to ideologies, because this week the topic is narrative themes and ideologies. So I'm happy at the minute that we have covered the different narrative themes in the superhero genre and what a narrative theme is. It's now just about you almost applying that knowledge in your assignment. So moving on to what ideologies actually are. So an ideology is a person's idea about something, all right? It is a system of values. It is the way in which somebody views and sees something, okay? So an ideology is basically the way in which a person views a particular issue. So for example, the older generation might view the Black Lives Matter protests in a much different way to what a younger person may view the Black Lives Matter protests. That's based on generation, okay? Because their values and their attitudes and the way their beliefs are different because they are from a different generation. They've come up and they've been brought up through a different time to what we have, to what you have. So, as I said, it's the attitudes and beliefs in which an individual, group or society holds to be important. So essentially, it's the attitudes in which an individual views something as how important they view something. So these ideologies are often shared within society, okay? So, and this is how society should function, by making sure that these shared ideologies are shared by everybody. For example, some people might have they might view or their belief on murder, they might think it's acceptable, whereas it's been almost ingrained in our brains from a very, very early age that murder is absolutely unacceptable. To take somebody else's life is a totally, totally wrong thing to do. Okay, but that's the way in which our ideologies are about murder, but somebody might have a different view on that particular topic, all right? But that is what an ideology is. It's the way in which we view a particular issue. So in the case of murder, that is typically deemed to be very, 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 very wrong. So we are going to look at, specifically, the way in which superhero films view and represent the female gender. So we have touched on this a little bit before, okay? Because when you did stock characters and representations, you touched on the way in which the female gender is represented. So if you have done this lesson, you should be quite confident in your ability to be able to do this. So ideologies in films. Now, the ideologies that I've talked about in society, such as murder, okay, are also relevant and can clearly be seen on TV and film, okay? So if somebody commits a murder in a crime drama, we see that as being wrong, okay? So that's why we almost want that particular person to be caught, and we watch to the end until they are caught. So it's particularly relevant, I think, in relation to how female characters are portrayed within the media as well, okay? So gender equality is a topic which is still up for debate in today's society. And I personally, if I was going to offer my opinion, I do not feel that we are there. We've still got a long way to go between when the genders are going to be balanced. We have got a long way to go before that actually I could say that it's equal. Okay, but this issue of gender inequality and the way in which females are represented is portrayed in the media. So with that in mind, what I want you to do is a quick recall task. All right, so I want you to answer the question, how are females typically represented in superhero films? Now you can either do this as a paragraph, or you can do this using the bullet points which I have given you here to consider these points. All right. So you can set it out however you like, whether it's a paragraph or whether you just want to do bullet points and take some notes. But I want you to think about how females usually appear within superhero films. What colours are usually associated with those characters? What items of clothing do they wear? Are they in positions of power typically in superhero films? What character roles do they usually play? What are their emotions like in superhero films? What occupation do they have? What jobs? And how intelligent are they typically within that film? So I want you to consider those 9 things and answer the question, how are females typically represented? Now, I imagine you'll probably want to spend about 10 minutes completing this activity. So pause the video, off you go. Fantastic. Okay, I'm hoping that you've been able to complete that activity. It's a recall test that we have done previously, so it might have helped if you had a look back at your previous notes. But we are going to look at now how women tend to be represented within the media. Okay, so women in the media often tend to be beautiful. They often tend to be attractive. They often have long hair, slim waist, curvy female features, and they are often sexualized and seen as objects for men in the film and for those who are watching. Okay, quite more often than not, the women that you see on your TV screens are seen to be attractive and beautiful. Okay, that is just the way in which it is. All right, so, and it's the same in superhero films as well. They are often over-sexualized. They often wear tight clothing to reveal their kind of curvy female features, and they're seen to be objectified by men. So let me give you an example. In Spider-Man, Mary Jane, without Spider-Man, would essentially die. She is reliant on that being saved by Peter Parker. All right, and then the reward for Peter Parker at the end of the film is a kiss. Okay, now that just kind of means that Mary Jane and her character in the film is almost a reward for the male character. So that's what I mean when I say that they are often objectified. The next thing, the size and physique, they're often slim, small, and seen as weak and vulnerable. So often they play what a character role called the damsel in distress, where they need to be saved by the hero. Okay, and without the hero, they'll essentially probably die. Next up, clothing. As I said, often it's tight clothing, and this is to reveal their curvy female features and to appeal to the male audiences. Okay, so often, as I said, this is sexualizing the female characters. Okay, it's making them seen more as sex objects and for the viewing pleasure of the male rather than actually being significant to the story. Next up, emotions. So often in superheroes films, females are affected emotionally by things. Now, this isn't always the case. I know that, for example, Black Widow is an exception to this, but often they are very emotional and they make decisions based on their emotions. This is just stereotypes, by the way. Obviously, I do not believe this whatsoever. This is just the way in which stereotypically superhero films represent ideologies about femininity in this way. And lastly, the female characters often tend to have relationships within the film. Okay, they often tend to rely on others and aren't really seen to be free and independent. So we've just gone through the ideologies about female representations and the way in which females are represented. So I now want you to apply this knowledge of ideologies to the superhero genre. So I want you to create this table in your books or on an A4 piece of paper. Ideologies of superhero genre. So I've just given you some there, and you've just gone through. I've just gone through some of them with you. But what I'd like you to do is essentially create this table so you can see the way in which these genders are represented almost totally opposite to one another within the superhero genre. Okay, so I want you to apply this knowledge of ideologies to the superhero genre. So what ideologies of male and female characters did you expect to see in the superhero genre or in a superhero film? So pause the video, off you go. Okay, I'm hoping you've been able to do that activity. So I'm going to take you through now ideologies about women and men in superhero films. Now, this is based on stereotypes. As I said, this is not what I believe whatsoever. This is based on stereotypes, okay? So, when females are often shown, they are sometimes portrayed as non-essential or passive characters. So that essentially means that without that female character, the narrative can still go on. They aren't seen as being absolutely essential to the narrative. Now, if you look at this particular image here, it kind of demonstrates that. Look at the male characters positioned in the center of the frame, looking quite dominant, and then look at the size of the Black Widow here, okay, just in comparison to the rest of them. Now, she appears quite small, so realistically, if you were going to look at the importance of that character, you would potentially see her as non-essential. So female characters are more likely to have a mentor, okay, and the majority of the female characters tend to work in a team rather than alone. So again, looking back to this team of males and then with the one female character. Now there are of course a few exceptions to this, Wonder Woman being one of them, okay, Captain Marvel being another. But this is again, stereotypically, this is how superheroes represent and have construct ideologies about females. So the next thing that I'm going to discuss with you is the idea that the way in which females become victorious over their villain is often achieved through persuasion, compassion, being nurturing, rather than like weapons, physical strength and aggression like males. So they're seen to have more compassion and more of a personality potentially than their male counterparts, than their male superheroes. So this highlights the maternal stereotypes, where it's the females who tend to have more emotions, more feelings, and they use this to be victorious within superhero films. So if you think about Black Widow, for example, she is certainly a female superhero who uses compassion and persuasion to get what she wants. Is that because she's a female? I'm not sure. But again, it's playing on this idea about females being emotional. So collectively, these results may suggest to viewers that women are less important, knowledgeable and capable than men, and therefore are less likely to be a hero. Now, as I said, and as I am emphasising, this is not what I personally believe. This is based on stereotypes, and this is based on the superhero films which you will often watch, okay? Maybe more so in the past. For example, Spider-Man, which was released in 2002, tends to have play on these kind of stereotypes of women being less important and less knowledgeable and capable than men. A lot more recently, for example, though, with Wonder Woman, with Captain Marvel, we have seen the importance of women as superheroes. But the sheer amount of... But I think just from the fact that there's so many more male superheroes than there are female, I think that does tell us something about this genre, that it does play on these stereotypes and use these stereotypes. So as I said, there are some examples which go against this, but mainly a lot follow these ideas. So make sure you note these ideas down about ideologies of femininity. So, masculinity, on the other side, again, make sure you are adding this to your tables. Representations of men across the media tend to show the following. So they seem to be strong physically and intellectually. There seem to be both strong intelligence and strong in battle. Power. They often have positions of power. Maybe that's due to the fact that they are wealthy as well. So they're successful and they're often in positions where they're able to give instructions rather than receive them. Colours. They often are shown in colours which are typically masculine colours, so reds and blues. Their physique, they're often muscular, strong, toned, tall, powerful. It's interesting to note, though, that the male physique is becoming a lot more important for representations of masculinity. So that muscular definitions strength is really, really important in more recent superhero films. Think to Aquaman, for example. It plays on this idea of Aquaman being physically strong and appealing in that sense as well. So they're seen as well, males, to be independent. So that's financially independent, and that means intellectually independent as well. They are often the people who are of thought, and they act on that thought, okay? What's also important, as I've noticed, told you to note down before, is the theme of isolation. So they don't seem, and they never need to rely on others. They're often on their own and can manage on their own. Then, lastly, it's this idea of males and masculinity not being in touch with their emotional side. That's because they are seen to be in control of their emotions and manly, okay? So they're not seen to be very or particularly emotional people. Okay, so it's now to the time where I've finished the teaching of narrative themes and ideologies, and I now want you to begin the assignment section. So on the last slide of this video lesson and of the lesson which I'm going to send out to you and the PowerPoint attached is the slide I would like you to complete for your assignment. And the way in which you do it is the fact that you answer the questions in relation to your chosen superhero film or TV show. So you just need to apply the knowledge which we've just learnt on narrative themes and ideologies to your chosen superhero film. Okay? So this work is contributing towards your final grade in the subject. So please make sure that you do complete this work to the best of your ability and in as much detail as possible. When you have completed this work, all I need you to do is submit the assignment work, whether it be on a PowerPoint document or on a Word document, to Microsoft Teams before the deadline, which is the 30th of June. So here is the breakdown of the grading criteria. To get the very top grade, this is what you have to do. So you need to make sure that you are referring to specific examples from scenes within the film, okay? So you can talk about the film in a broader sense, but always relate it to a specific example within your film. Also think about how the effect of this particular theme may make the audience feel, okay? So if you're talking about representations of females, for example, how would that make a female audience member feel? Would they be quite potentially insulted by some of the representations in the film and the way in which females are represented? It's possible. So this is the slide in which I would like you to complete. So all you need to do is pick the ideologies and the themes which you can relate to your chosen superhero film choice 1. Okay? Everybody should be able to easily do good versus evil, isolation, responsibility, sacrifice, and femininity. All right? Teamwork may be slightly different depending on what your superhero film is. So if you cannot relate teamwork to your chosen superhero film, that's absolutely fine. Move past it. Just ignore that particular theme. Okay? But I'd like you to set it out exactly how it is on this PowerPoint slide. So I want you to do 6 bullet points, if you can, all the 6 themes and ideologies, and then answer these questions in as much detail as you possibly can. So for the first one, good versus evil, I want you to explain how the superhero is good, explain their morals, and how the villain is evil from your film choice. So I want you to explain the specific ways which they are opposite from one another. So you might want to go back to your binary opposites slide and draw on a couple of specific examples which you've talked about there, okay? Because that may help you with this particular one. The next one is about isolation. So I want you to explain how your superhero or villain character suffers from isolation and whether they are unable to fit into normality. So why is this? Is it because they experienced some sort of trauma? Were they bullied? Can they not get a job? Do they prefer to be alone? Did somebody die in the family? Okay. Is it because of the way in which they view the world? Is it because they aren't selfish? Is that why they're isolated? Again, if you need to go back and listen to the isolation slide which I just took you through, then please go and do that. The next one is teamwork. So does the superhero have any assistants? Is it another superhero who helps them? Is it the police? How do they work together? So is this teamwork effective? Describe the relationship between them. Do they trust one another? Do they communicate well? Do they accept one another for who they are? Do they know their strengths and weaknesses? Do they use their strengths and weaknesses to their advantage? So again, provide specific examples from the film. The fourth one down, responsibility. Talk about how your superhero feels responsible to help people and save people, almost seeing it as their duty. Why is this? Is this because of the type of person they are? Again, provide a specific example from within your film. Next one is sacrifice. So what are they willing to sacrifice to save others? Okay, again, if you need to rewatch the slide on sacrifice, then please go and do so. And then the last one is about femininity and how it's represented. So I want you to go back and pick the specific stereotypes, which I discussed earlier, and apply them to your chosen superhero films. Okay? So that's this week's assignment work that I want you to complete, which is due on the 30th of June. Okay? Once you've completed the work, I just need you to submit it into the assignment section on Microsoft Teams. And when you've done that, fantastic. It's been really, really good to see some of you last week and this week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again in the future. But please make sure that we are staying on top of this assignment work. For now, though, I'll see you all soon.